Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back. You are tuned into the afternoon beat right here on Salam Media. My name is Jadwid, and I'll be keeping you company for the next hour or so. This afternoon, we are cutting straight to a hot topic: the perks of power and who's paying for them. Action SA's Alan Beesley, a member of parliament, is here to unpack the remuneration of public office bearers amendment bill, better known as the Cut Cabinet's Perk Cabinet Perks Bill, rather. It's a push to rein in what some call the executive's blank check, from free utilities to bloated offices, all while VAT hikes loom over the rest of us. Alan joins us on the phone. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's dive in and find out why you're saying it's time to trim the fat. Good afternoon.
Thank you, and good afternoon to you, and good afternoon to your listeners.
All right, Alan, when we're speaking about the remuneration of public office bearers amendment bill, or what Action SA calls Cut Cabinet Perks Bill, what exactly are we speaking about here?
Now, essentially, what happens is ministers and deputy ministers have got several perks because of their office, and it's principally overseas travel, local travel. It's houses. They've got 2 houses, VIP bodyguards, it's cars. So it's anything pertaining to the perks of their office.
What's the most entrenched perk you trying to dismantle, or maybe not even just dismantle, but perhaps trim back? And why has it persisted so long?
Yeah, so the big one is for us is overseas travel. The ministers and deputy ministers have got a liking for overseas travel, and the cost, because they don't just go with themselves. Some of them take their spouses, and then a lot of them take their staff with them, and it's all first class travel. And a classic case is the one minister spent one night a hotel in Australia, and it cost 198,000 for one night, and that could have built a house for a family for the rest of their lives. So there's just no linking with what's happening on the ground and the amount of money they're actually spending, particularly overseas travel.
But this is quite a large amount of money to be spending on overseas travel, the one you mentioned in particular. But critics might say that trimming perks simply won't fix systemic overspending when state-owned enterprises bleed billions. How do you argue then that this is not just a symbolic sideshow?
So I think it's a brilliant question, and that gets to the crux of the matter, and that's why it's ActionSA and myself, we're driving it so pertinent. It's not so much, the money is a big issue, but it's the example that you're setting. The society, government can't tell society that they need to tighten their belts when their own belt is getting loose. It's more the example that you're setting. You know, when I'm flying to Parliament down to Cape Town, I see ministers arriving on the tarmac in 3 BMWs. They get in the people. It's just it's sending the wrong signal to society. It's basically saying we can eat, but you can't eat. And the only way we're going to change this country is if we have servant heart leadership that leads from the front.
I mean, spending public officials and their spending sprees, it's not exactly news to us in South Africa. It's something we are quite familiar with. And at this point, I think the headlines are quite tired, you know. But to help us pin this down and just understand this bill, what exactly is it proposing as some of the measures to get the spending under control, and perhaps how much do taxpayers actually stand to save if it does become law?
Yeah. So what happens is currently the president of the country, he can change perks as he likes. So there's no oversight of it. So what we're saying from ActionSA is that this must come before Parliament, before any perks are changed. So Parliament must have oversight, and Parliament must decide. So it just brings greater transparency and greater governance to the system, because at the moment there's no transparency. The president can change perks overnight, and we will be none the wiser. So it must come to Parliament first, and then every 5 years it needs to be reviewed. And so we can, and economic conditions have to be put in touch. So, like a simple thing is like we can say nobody actually knows what deputy ministers do, yet they travel all around the world. We can put in a rule saying deputy ministers can't travel international. So that's just greater oversight, greater transparency. And in terms of costing, we've done estimates that it could save about 5 billion. But again, I highlight the point that it's just more about money. It's setting the example. It's like our ministers and deputy ministers live in a separate South Africa to the rest of us.
I think that's something many people do point out, that our politicians appear to be out of touch with the realities of South Africans, and they seem to be spending quite liberally, but then want to increase the VAT. But yeah, when we speak about this bill in particular, I know over the past week it has generated quite a considerable amount of discussion, and one of the points that have been made is that this is not entirely new. The DA tried to put something before Parliament like this in the previous administration, but it didn't quite get through. Now, fast forward to 2025, and we have the DA as part of the Government of National Unity. And I think some critics might have argued that on ActionSA's part, at least, this is, they're asking where's the originality in all of this. Your response to that?
In my introduction to the bill and every press statement that I've done is I've said that originally the DA's bill was Dr. Schreiber who introduced it. And then what happened is when sixth Parliament came to an end, that bill lapsed. So then it should have been introduced again in the seventh Parliament. But because the DA were part of the GNU and now part of the problem, they've not allowed the bill to run. So we're saying no, it's an excellent piece of legislation. We gave Dr. Schreiber the credit, but the problem is he's never reintroduced it because he's part of the problem now. And it's amazing that they've come out swinging, but it was their bill 2 years ago, and we just think it's extremely pertinent, and especially with talking about VAT increases now, it's massively. And it's going to be interesting to see how the DA votes on it because it was originally their bill, they let it lapse, but now they're part of the problem.
I mean, with something like this, you really are touching nerves. You're clamping down on the purse here. But ministers would then, especially those who want to push back against this, they would justify their perks as essential for their roles. What's your alternative framework to ensure that they function without those lavish handouts?
Yeah, well, I would disagree with him because I think a lot of the overseas, I think, and I'm saying with this all due regard, a lot of them Google and see where our overseas conference and actually go. So there's actually when they come back, they need to justify what the benefit is to South Africans for going on these trips. I mean, we've got no problem. I mean, some of them are vitally important, but you don't have to spend 198,000 Rand in a hotel. You don't have to take your spouses with. And for me, the key thing is if I'm paying for something myself, it's always a measure if I'm using somebody else's money. And I can tell you, the minister, if she was paying for a room for herself, she wouldn't have paid 198,000. If she was paying for herself, she wouldn't have taken her staff on the trip with them. And all their staff, the PA, all their staff go, and they all fly and business first class. So that's a big issue. A lot of the things is valid, but they need to come back and they need to justify why they've been on those trips.
How will you then ensure that ministers don't find loopholes? For example, shifting the costs to departmental budgets?
So again, it's a very good question. So I think the role of ActionSA in Parliament at the moment, we call ourselves the constructive rational opposition. So we're keeping on asking these questions in Parliament. How much money have you spent? Where did you go? So those are very important to keep asking those questions. And it's an important role of the opposition to hold ministers and deputy ministers to account. And we can do that through parliamentary questions. And that's the right that we have as political partners. And they are meant to answer the question, and you get worried by the ones who don't answer the questions. But we're not going to let the matter go. There needs to be transparency and all about this information. Yeah.
Alan, this is a very important discussion. It's something that really has to be had, especially if it happens in Parliament. This is something the public would be looking forward to because some might be wondering, well, okay, here finally we have some attempts being made towards accountability and maybe reining in these ministers. And I would really like to explore this a little bit further, but we do need to take a quick ad break. And I think when we come back, we'll just wrap up this discussion.
Salam Media. your spiritual companion this Ramadan.
Freedom Stationery supply Marlin and Marlin Kids pens to me and my school friends. They supply just about everything we need to help us get a better education, from books to files to rulers. In fact, any any accessory we need. Freedom Stationery. Education for the nation. What does accessory mean?
Discover the Africa of your dreams and surround yourself with her spectacular beauty. Relax beneath her serene sunsets and explore wildlife at its natural best. It's where the pride of Africa comes together. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve. Get to know the Big Five or cruise on an elephant safari game drive. Interact with lion and tiger cubs and enjoy world-class halal cuisine while we pamper you during your 5-star stay. Indulge in the true African experience. For reservations, call now on 042 203 1400 or visit kwantu.co.za. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve, the place of gathering.
More than 800 million people around the world live in deep poverty, uncertain of where their next meal will come from. For those on the brink of starvation, a food pact means survival, dignity, and hope. Send food. Send kindness. Be the reason a family does not go hungry. Donate now to Islamic Relief.
World-class financial services only. Ethical financial products. Look no further. Sapphire Global offers a wide range of financial service offerings from short-term to life and investments. A full-service center with all financial requirements under one brand. Our highly skilled and experienced consultants are ready to help protect your financial future. Contact us on 041 001 0184 or visit our website on www.sapphireglobalfs.com. Sapphire Global is an authorized financial services provider.
Valley's Motor Spares. We supply motor spares and accessories for all makes and models of motor cars, LDVs, buckies, trucks, and earth-moving equipment. We deliver on time, every time. Please contact us via WhatsApp on 014-592-0925 or call 014-592-0925 or visit 28 Zenderling Street, Rustenburg. Remember the name, Valley's Motor Spares.
You are listening to Salam Media live from our headquarters in South Africa. This is Salam Media, keeping you company this Ramadan.
And we're back. Welcome back. You are listening to the Afternoon Beat on Salam Media, where we're actually looking at the nitty-gritty of ActionSA's Cut Cabinet Perks Bill with their Member of Parliament, Alan Beesley. Before the break, we were unpacking how this bill aims to slap some serious oversight on the ministerial handbook. Think millions in taxpayer cash on the line. Alan is still with us, and we've got a bit more to chew on before we let him go. Alan, if we're just looking back, to the early days of South Africa's democracy, we're talking about the 1990s. At that time, ministers had modest perks under Mandela's government, at least compared to today. So one wonders then, what's actually driving this creep, and how does your bill tackle the root and not just the symptoms of this issue?
It's such a deep question, and I think it's a sad reflection of our society. Is when people get into power, they seem to lose their morals, and that they were appointed by the people. And I think if you go back to the early days of the democracy, we had some incredible people, incredible role models. And I remember Praveen Gordhan. I used to travel a lot. Minister Gordhan used to stand in the queue, carry his own briefcase, and board the plane with the rest of us. Whereas other ministers would come in So I think it goes back to one's individual morals and things like that. And I was blown away by Minister Gordon, just his humility to be standing in the same queue as the rest of us, And I've seen now some ministers won't even carry their own bags, they won't carry their own briefcase. And it just seems like there's that saying that power, absolute power corrupts. And I think that's the sad thing is I think it's time that and one of my heroes is a guy called Martin Luther King Jr. And he talks about that we need a revolution, but we need not a violent revolution, but a revolution of morals. And I think that's so important for our country and for the leadership of the country to lead by that. I mean, if you go back to Mr. Mandela, what a humble human being he was, and I think the greatest leaders we've ever had in the world have been people of humility. And I think that's what we need. And if ministers can't show it, then we need to introduce bills that hopefully can bring some type of humility back and shine a light on these perks. And if anything that's done is shine a light on these perks and the extravagant lifestyle of ministers and deputy ministers.
But does the bill take sufficient action to actually tackle the root causes of this?
No, it certainly won't. But the other bill that we're also going to be introducing simultaneously is cutting the size of the cabinet. I mean, we've got 75 members of the cabinet now. I mean, we've got the most bloated cabinet, I think, one of it in the world in terms of our GDP. So we're also going to be introducing a bill about doing away with deputy ministers, and we need to right size the cabinet. But I also think, when it's coming back to the VAT increases and tax increases, our saying in ActionSA is not that there's a lack of money in the system. There's just too much corruption, incompetence, and wastage. But it starts at the top. That fish rots from the head, and unless we can get the head of the fish right, which is our cabinet, we're going to battle to get the rest of government departments and entities right.
Trust in government, it's already razor thin. How does this bill then rebuild faith that leaders aren't there just for the perks, especially when promises in the past promises to cut waste have fizzled out?
Yeah, so again, I think it's oversight and transparency. I think when the public can see and there's transparency about what ministers and deputies and ministers, it'll start building the trust, because at the moment there's no transparency. If we weren't asking the questions, society wouldn't know that a minister spent 109,000 rand for one night. So I think the more transparency, I think we can start building trust again. But there has to be transparency in the system, and ministers can't hide away that they need. But the more the transparency, the more trust can develop.
There's also the concern then, if this falls through the cracks as well, and this doesn't actually make it through, it might give fuel the perception that Parliament can't actually tackle its own waste. How do you stop this from becoming another exhibit in the public's case that Parliament can't do that?
Yeah, so we're going to do all that we can to get this bill passed. I mean, I've been reaching out to people that I call rational people, and so we're going to try and build a momentum around that. And again, it's not to attack anybody or to credit anybody. It's just to bring transparency and, as you said, build trust back into the system. So I'm reaching out to rational people across and I say to people, ideologically, I might differ with somebody, but I can still respect that person. And together we can work together in combating these ills in our society. So I'm reaching out to various people across the political aisle and trying to build up a bit of momentum for this bill. And I'll be very surprised or disappointed if it doesn't get passed. And people need to judge the parties that don't vote and support it.
Any positive responses yet?
Yes, most definitely I have. I have had very, very positive. In fact, I haven't had one negative response. The only negative response is the DA, and you can understand why, because we introduced their bill, but they said that they would support it. I mean, it originally was their bill. So that's the only negative thing, but nobody's come out and saying that they would not support it. No.
All right.
And it's quite interesting. I sit on the finance committee, which is quite a key thing because it oversees all the budget and those too. So I'll be talking because every single party is talking about we need to cut the fat, we need to cut the waste. So they need to put their money where they talk it. And so I'll be very surprised if some of the political parties and don't support it. But I'll be surprised. We've all been surprised in the past.
Yeah, as you say, time to put the money where their mouth is, and I think in the coming months we will see how that unfolds and who actually is committed to making some of those sacrifices for the public, in the public interest. But Alan, thank you so much for discussing this with us on Salam Media.
No, and thanks for having me, and I really appreciate your time and the questions. Thank you so much, and good afternoon to you and to the listeners.
All right, that was Alan Beesley, Member of Parliament for ActionSA, speaking to us about what is quite often styled the Cut Cabinet Perks Bill, essentially trying to cut the fat and rein in ministers' spending. We're talking hundreds of thousands of rand being spent, millions sometimes, in total, on perks for people who are meant to be representing the public. Obviously, this was not, it must be noted, this was not an Action SA initiative from the beginning. In fact, the DA introduced this under the previous administration, but then that didn't go very far. And now that the DA is in government, they didn't actually revive it. It was Action SA who's in opposition that revived it. And I was actually hoping to speak to a spokesperson for the Democratic Alliance to try and understand where they stand in relation to this bill today in 2025. I mean, a lot has changed since they put this forward to Parliament in the previous administration. They're now in government. They're a party of government. They are in charge to an extent. It depends how you see that. But nonetheless, they are part of that, what we call the government of national unity. And one would assume they'd have some degree of influence on government. And then, we want to understand where do they stand in relation to this now that things have changed, times have changed. Do they still back such an initiative? If not, then why not? And how do they see it differently now? But unfortunately, the response from them was not forthcoming, and so we can't actually speak to them about this. But that brings us to exactly 4 minutes past 5 o'clock. We'll take a break for Asr. And when we come back, as we're winding down, I've got a lecture lined up for you. Please do stay with us.